Okay, good morning, everybody. I want to thank Ifra and every other affiliate for this singular honor to come here today and address this august gathering. I made a request kind of backstage before I was given the microphone. It has not been met, so I made that request again. Could you please bring down these figures? I think we'll be able to see and specifically why when we talk about vernacular architecture, it is something really cardinal in terms of the people. It is the architecture of the people. So when we are talking heritage to do with architecture, there's no way we can bypass vernacular because that is where the people's love is situated. Am I okay? I can work with this. Good, thank you. So it doesn't have to be anything fabricated, high fabricated. It's just something very dear, very precious to a person, to a people, and it's so precious they want it to be passed on to generations even unborn. That's heritage. When we're now talking about alternative heritage, of course, there's also the aspect of something near and dear to you. But then sometimes what you term near and dear, other people don't appreciate. They tend to denigrate, particularly if in your social context you are already a people they don't reckon with. So whatever you bring is alternative, but it is still heritage. And it could even be something that has just sprung up, maybe from a marginalized people, but it is something near and dear to them, and they want it to endure. Vernacular architecture, several authorities have dealt exhaustively with that. We have the likes of Amos Rapoport, Paul Oliver, Bernard, Dovsky, and I have my own experiences too in that genre. So collectively, when we talk about vernacular architecture, we are talking about the spontaneous, reaction, the spontaneous overtures people make when they're thinking of how to accommodate themselves. So it encapsulates their social realities, their spatial context. So it also has to do with their all-round realities in terms of their finance, their economic well-being, in terms of the interactions they have had socio-politically, even sometimes with other cultures. There's no way as human beings we interact one with another and something is not rubbing off. So when we're talking about vernacular, particularly in the context of architecture, it's a cumulative of all those various experiences transposed to space. Then the environmental context is extremely important because, like I said, it is a people's spontaneous response to their housing needs. So, of course, they start in the immediate environment. What is here that I can use to build a house? Who are the people who can give me assistance? That's why starting from we look at the components of the vernacular, but starting from the Yoruba one, because we're in Yoruba land, there are Robert's Palace for that matter. Among the Yoruba, Onwe was how they came together, to build, help each other build. Okay, the beauty, one of the salient things about the vernacular, it is that it is ongoing. You cannot terminate the vernacular and say it has ended, unless you're saying people's lives, people's cultures, so dead, and that cannot happen. So it keeps evolving based on the present realities of your existence. Next. Okay, now it's working. Do I
Side. You have it by side.
at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in 2007 and presented the paper. I had the privilege, similar, to have met up with Cordelia here in this picture. So he came to present. This was when he was doing his presentation. I too presented my paper and I took this picture with him. And that was where I met up for the first time with another presenter here today in the person of architect BC Sulu Olumide. So we took these pictures together. So this dialogue has been on years and years. Okay. Then, looking specifically at the components of vernacular architecture, vernacular is fed into by traditional building craft practices, by the high sociocultural ethos that drives it, and also by a willingness to accommodate other influences spontaneously, they're not imposed. Then, specifically, what are the components of Nigerian vernacular architecture? And unless we want to deceive ourselves, yes, there were a lot of negatives about colonization. But in terms of architecture, colonization played a signal role in bequeathing to us salient issues about the architecture of Nigeria's masses. So the British colonial influence in architecture, the tropicalized version, was a major influence all over the country. And there were two streams. There was the direct impact in terms of what the British built for themselves, what they trained locals to help them build, and there was the indirect in terms of what they facilitated for other people to come and do. And this indirect influence was born of the end to the slave trade, the abolition of the slave trade. So you had Afro-Brazilians coming from the Americas with the Portuguese, Hispano-Portuguese building influence. So the British were responsible for those two streams, and then we also have the Arabic Islamic influence from across the Sahara, owing to the Trans-Sahara trade. From Kano, Timbuktu, Agadez, on and on. So those things impacted the traditional way of building. And the people henceforth ran with those things they have voluntarily imbibed. Here is Jekyll House, the administrative headquarters of Legacy 1995, and remember, this is where we have national meetings if we need to converge there. The features, I want to discuss them now because I don't want to remember. We can see the complex roof structure. We can see windows all around. We see in veranda in front, we see columns supporting, and for now. Okay, so we're flashing back, recap, to look at where we're coming from traditionally in Nigeria, and then landing us in the vernacular. So, Hausa, typical architecture, we see the shallow dome, we see very, very thick earth walls, massive, sometimes about 2 feet thick, 600 mm. We see very, very small windows, limiting direct solar radiation, and also significantly, look at the height of this window above the lintel of the door. It speaks to privacy, which is extremely important in Islamic societies. There's no people, particularly to see their women. Then, of course, Fulani, the nomadic lifestyle, their cattle dictate if they settle at all. And where they do, they're ready to go at the click of the fingers. So, of course, their recourse is to very, very ephemeral building materials. Hello? Okay, so we're looking at the TV tribe, and these two illustrations speak to that. This is actually, it's typical in terms of form and materials. We have thatch roofing, we have a circular floor plan, and then we have post supports for the extended roof. But it's atypical because it is actually the TV chief's hut. So there's a lot of ornate sculpturing of the columns. Oops. Yes. So this is a more symbolic issue. We have two huts clustered on a third one. The third one is Yate. Ordinarily, it's the reception hall. That's the entrance, the reception hall. But the significance of this configuration is that only siblings from a mother can have an arrangement that uses just one ate. So if you go into a TV homestead, the number of such clusters that you see immediately tells you the number of wives in that homestead. So it's very socio-culturally symbolic. Then we have our riverine folks, represented by the John group. Of course, floating in quotes, architecture suspended above the water. If we're looking critically, it's unfortunate that there's too much that we can't see. Strictly speaking, this isn't traditional because it begins to speak already to vernacular. We can see zinc sheets used for the bathing enclosures. Here, this is actually flexi, synthetic material, but it's still in the spirit of the traditional practices. So I just wanted environmental context to be reflected in what I was showing. So this building, Ile Akogun in Ile-Ife, represents Yoruba architecture. And we know that the selling point, the unique selling point of Yoruba architecture is the impluvial courtyard. So here it is in the floor plan. Here it is in reality. This picture was taken when we went to, assess the building like 12 years ago. And there, one of my postgraduate students, so we're there. I'll come back to this, and unfortunately on a very sad note, but let's move on. So now we want to look at the characteristics. We have seen kind of globally what are the salient things binding traditional architecture together in Nigeria. Every genre is a product of environmental and socio-cultural realities. I cited a T for that socio-cultural one. We have seen environmental in terms of the Fulani using stakes, thatch, that kind of thing. We have seen the job. So you use what is immediately around you, and of course your family relations dictate what you build. There's no point, agglomerating spaces that are useless to your family. So that's the starting point. They all have that in common. Total dependence on locally available materials. If you're doing any processing, very minimal. Hands, feet, to trample, to hold your hands, very minimal. So legal processing are mostly sunshine for drying things. We don't go out of the way. We could in some scenarios to fire, depending on what you're actually trying to achieve. So building skills are not learned in any institution. Even if you have apprenticeship, it's very, very casual. They are more rule of thumb. Our fathers did it this way. You to learn the rudiments, all and all like that. And over time, those processes get refined based on trial and error. Okay, we did it this way. My father did it this way. It wasn't working. I saw him. I saw the result. Let me try this way. So that's what actually informs what you get at the end of the day. And cumulatively, the product is a potpourri. It's an agglomeration, a colonial precedence that we have now imbibed and are running with in our vernacular. I gave us an overview of that building the other time. Either bungalows or two-story buildings with formerly British direct colonial. The ground raised above the natural ground level, complex roof formations, pronounced eaves, about 4 feet, then extensive fenestration. We saw how I pointed out the general house all around. Of course, later it was a matter of course ventilation, not a matter of quantity, but of quantitative placement. We now later understood that. So, designing for cross ventilation, sit outs in a typical Yoruba imperial cultural house. You sit out around the veranda, around the imperial culture. So that's inside. Your veranda interaction, family interaction space is inward looking. But with what we got for the colonial administrators, the sit-outs were external, balcony veranda. You are seeing in the streets, people passing by and also seeing moving. Then suspended flooring on the timber, then complementary integration of timber, offset flooring, you can have as balustrades, advantage, as paneling, carved fascia boards. Carved fascia boards. That was one significant thing we got from that. So the Brazilian, every other thing that I said about the British direct, but then they now have bequeathed to us what the man on the streets. That's the most, the commonest attributes of the Nigerian vernacular. The central double loaded corridor from the original Portuguese, the passage. If me, I face you. If you say to them, this your house, Brazilian, you say Brazil, you call Brazil. What my forefathers have been building for 10,000, what kind of Brazil? They believe they originated it because they have appropriated it. So those are the issues. Then the Brazilian type of architecture is extremely ornate, a lot of decoration. Every part of it, columns, fascia boards, window hoods, dados, a lot of ornamentation. So this is in a company. So why should we think vernacular spaces are important in contemporary, modern heritage discourse? Why? Why bother? After all, it's the architecture of the masses now, and we are elite. So 4 of my postgraduate students are here. One of my long-standing former students who has been HOD of architecture at UI here is also, she's also here. So I'm speaking to the elite, but I'm telling us that vernacular spaces matter. So why? Because when you look at the term vernacular, if you understand what it means, and if you understand what heritage means, you will realize that they have a very, very important, non-negotiable interface. And that has to do with agape, hostel, so we wanted in the hostel context, the OAU students and that kind of thing. And when we came to demonstration, I said to the Prof, so you need to look for money for us to make the phrase, timber phrase, because I use timber. Because I applied my mosquito netting to the timber. The weather proofing is on this side. The weather proofing is on the outside. The windows you can relate to them through. And then you have the nets and tie weather trees. So I said, you will bring money for timber for the river. He said, what? You mean what? I said, louvers. He said, no, louvers. Which way? I said, no. Louvers are environmentally applicable. The only thing preventing aeration is the thickness of each blade. You have the advantage of being able to think as you like, and then economically they are sustainable. Imagine a scenario in which children are playing ball. There's no way children will hit a window with a ball and all the liver blades will break. You'll just be a few. So you remove those two, you replace with others. But if you have one pane and a ball hits that, you replace the whole pane. So he said, I said, but Prof, this is what I use in my own house. And you visited me. He said, okay, come. So he came with his wife. And when he said, it is good, go ahead, go ahead. So we need to do things visibly so they see. People like you, but someone like Professor Obama, she's doing her own part on giving such a forum where we can brainstorm people who didn't know before. They now get to be writing and they also pass on the message. So I think that's what we can do.
There are many ways in which the vernacular can be related to the contemporary, theoretically. For example, people are talking about climate change now, and they're talking about eco-sensitive design. They're talking about passive design. You know, if we connect the ideas of the vernacular to all these contemporary concepts, of course, people in higher education will understand that. But what we, as part of advocacy, we need to advocate contributing to education curriculum to include matters of the vernacular and the traditional, right from even when the children are just in kindergarten, so they begin to understand many of these things. We see elsewhere that even little children are being taught how to even make bricks and blocks. There's nothing that says that we cannot teach them how to make even blocks, building blocks in clay and in sand. And then you begin to understand the merits of it. So, like you said, it will seem like an elitist thing, but it's not exactly that way if we are able to start from when the children are young. And then we can carry the message further, just like Ifra, Prof, and Jill, the way they have been going about it, we need more advocacy. There's no doubt.
Prof, first and foremost, I would like to appreciate the organizers of this program, Professor Vernacular, that is Dr. Latifa and South Julia. I would like our presenter, our professor, to actually come back to where she mentioned about the particular scenario in Ife about the building, the alcohol going out, now being probably metamorphosed into another thing entirely from the concept of the vernacular that we are here to discuss for public consumption. So I want to say that the Prof should please tell us what is the case now with alcohol house in Ife, so I can have this done and have something to learn from. Thank you.
Because there was one thing that made me sad when I was forced to stop. Here, like I said, I had a team and I worked with research. There were 3 of us. Unfortunately, one of us is dead. So, the man who has passed on and myself were the 2 who were architects. The 3rd person is a geologist. But I brought him on board because he's an different teacher. And I realized that for me to be able to interact effectively with the people of the town, which was an unusual beginning, and need someone who could speak if they disarm them when we needed to go into houses and request, so he came on board. So, because he was a different man, he knew where the heritage sites were. So, he took us to his appointment, and I was able in the post-graduate students to celebrate. So, we organized a meeting with different chiefs, and we told them this building, over For our general edification, the Akogun in Ife history, Yoruba land, is the equivalent of a field marshal. So he's a military icon. So this was both his official and personal residence. But if he passed on, somebody else who became a leader. So we saw the condition of the building and we felt no. It left too much to be desired. So I interacted with the chief, told them I could come up with a renewal proposal. We will put new life into this building, retaining the salient characteristics of it so that it's a win-win situation. You get the building to be able to operate in real time and also to retain its heritage attributes. They said okay. So they flagged me off and I went and did this design. I don't know the design was everything in place. And I showed them and they were, no, this is the original. Could we please interface with the cabinet? They will get back to us. So that was it. And I kept waiting. And then one day I called up the fellow. I said, what's going on? You haven't heard from these chiefs. He said, was that he had a reluctance to tell me. He said, the council of chiefs said they want a modern building in that place. So they had bulldozed it. Even before I got to it, they had bulldozed their home. I was so upset. I thought of something that happened like maybe 12 years ago. Maybe 15, closer to 15. I was so upset that up to today I have never been able to. This is what part of my summing up and work is that the world has become a global village. There are advantages to it, but one major advantage is that we are getting culturally disenfranchised. We are getting to the point where we are brainwashed into thinking that our heritage is worthless. Our heritage cannot stand the test of modern trends, modern thoughts. So anything wanting to hark back to the past is archaic. We must get rid of it. It's a very sad and subtle and dangerous form of nation. So Iyakogun is no more. That's the bottom line.
Thank you very much. Please put hands together once again.